All right. Welcome, everyone. And as Dre had indicated, we're going to be talking about the unassociated groupings, those summary counts, and kind of what it all means. I'm going to start today, though, as we often do. We try to steer people towards the knowledge base. So I'm at kb.verify.com in our analytics reporting guide, and I'm just going to jump down to where the unassociated appears here. And the unassociated groupings is part of the grouping stats and summary analytics. And it can be a little confusing, but if you can understand that the grouping stats are a way of kind of reorganizing or regrouping the search set or the set of call activity that's brought back from the search set, it kind of makes it easier. Now, the groupings, they're not available for every grouping type, but they are available when there's instances where the platform may not provide us with a piece of information that it's not kind of a required piece of the CDR or the supplemental lookups that we do. So just real briefly now, I'm going to come back to it again at the end with a little more detail. But I just want to go through real quick and just give you an idea. On the call manager platform, there's a lot of these CUCM lookups that may not always be populated department, device pool, or device type. And across other platforms, it occurs as well. With the teams on either side of a call, there's a bunch of fields that may not be populated. Same with WebEx calling. And even in the Zoom territory, there is a few of them that this may become active for. So we'll jump right into a couple examples here. So the first one that I'm in is going to be a call manager cluster, and I have kind of two examples here that we're going to look at. The first one, we have a primary search set here where we're looking for calls into in this case, it's a hunt group extension, and we're omitting parking lot devices because we know ahead of time that we don't want terminations that end up showing a parking lot device. Over in the grouping stats, we want to show the calls into that 77280 based on the terminating department and the DN description. And we have this toggled on so that we're going to include the groupings for unassociated. And so this is what you'll see anytime that a field has that available, regardless of platform. It'll show here on the grouping stats when you have the data grouping enabled. If the primary grouping type is subject to unassociated, that becomes available. So I pre-ran a couple reports in hopes of being able to finish on time. So I'm going to jump over to this one here. This is that first sample here, where we have that 77280 and the omission of the parking lot devices. So we have 231 total calls. And as I go down into the grouping stats here, where we have the combination terminating at department and then along with the DN description, we can see here that we have all the people in the maintenance department that were answering those calls, but we also see this, instances of no terminating DN description. We've got one example there. We've got 51 for no terminating department. And for this one, I kind of did the legwork for us here and was able to determine that all 51 of those that didn't have it were voicemail calls. And so that's something to keep in mind too, is that the varying devices and operations within your platform may not always populate these things just because of the nature of them. And if I were to jump down to this one, I can see that, yep, they all go to that final call party number of 8,000, which we know to be voicemail. I'll go back here and I'll cancel out of this one. We'll go into the second one. It's very similar, but in this case, we're looking for all the calls that terminate at 4-digit extensions. And for the grouping stats, I left that the same. So we're still looking at department and DN description. But when we go to the output here, much bigger sample, but we have a lot here in the no associated department. And in this case, we have the no DN description, which we can probably accurately guess from the last one that that those are the voicemail calls. But here we see that we have all these other users that are part of that grouping where they have these 4-digit extensions that they are also showing here. So this can often help with discovery on maybe some updates that need to be done. In this case, in the call manager for the DN description, if they want these mobility devices to reflect a department. So it's not just limited to the call manager platform. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to Teams here. So within Teams, a lot of the fields are different, but they're kind of the same. So we're going to go ahead and go into my third sample here. And for this one, and you'll notice the continuity between the platforms too. Everything, the look and feel is so consistent that you almost don't know you're in a different platform, but we are in Teams. So for this search set, I'm looking for data across 5 departments, but in my grouping, I want that to be grouped by team and the party name within that department. So I'm including this unassociated, and when I ran that, what we see is here's my my search set with 183 calls. We get down to the actual data though, and we see we've got 68 without associations, and we've got these 2 fellas here, Derek and Jim, who belong to a department, one of those departments, but they're not assigned to a team. So again, this can be real valuable and kind of determine where you might be exposed, because often when you kind of get to a final report, you don't always want to have that no associated active, but it's really good when you're developing a report to see where your gaps may be and to see what maybe you can do to either understand what's there or to maybe make changes to get more complete information on the report. And we're going to go on over to yet another platform. This time we're in WebEx calling. So WebEx calling with my 4th sample here. We'll take a look at this search set, and we're looking at calls that originate with a source that ends with 4 numeric numbers. And our grouping is based on that name and number that the call originated from. And again, with the unassociated grouping turned on, we can see when I run this report, this one is ranked here. So we have 20 calls where we don't have any party name to go along with that number. So this could be from an outside caller or that maybe doesn't have that information available coming into the WebEx calling, or an extension that maybe could be updated on the WebEx side. All right, so we have these reports that I wanted to also touch on Zoom. I wasn't able to get an example from the Zoom platform that has any unassociated in it, but I just want to show that across that platform too, if I were to set up a search set here, with the name and number, I could include that. Just when I ran it, everybody had included, so I didn't get an unassociated on this particular one. But all these reports that we create are also available to use in the dashboard widgets with the grouping stats widget. So here in the grouping stats widgets, I created a little dashboard for today showing the same reports that I created for entries in being used. So if I edit this one, you can see that I'm breaking it down by the terminating department, just as I did with the grouping within the report. And the search set, I'm actually using that report to bring back my data set. And so for this one, as I showed earlier, we know here that the no terminating is voicemail. So maybe with this one, we could choose to go ahead and leave that off for clarity's sake and just go with what we know. There we go. Now this is still showing the total count because the total count is based on what that search set brought back. The display is just based on what we chose in our grouping. And that's going to be true in your reports as well. So back here in a report, if I scroll back up to the top, this number isn't necessarily going to be representative of what's here if this ends up being a subset, especially in the absence of those no associated. So oftentimes when we get discrepancies with the total call counts that show in the groupings, it's either because we're omitting the unassociated, and also when people call each other, that can alter these numbers a little bit because one call from the top can count as two down here in the groupings. So back to the dashboard, here's the second example that I created where we know that that these are largely voicemail. Now we could go and alter that report to exclude the calls that terminate at extension 8000. Um, that's what a lot of times what we do when we're working with our customers is use that unassociated to identify what things are and then work on setting up the criteria for those search sets to get a more accurate, more granular. So if we were to say omit the ones that terminated with 8000, this number would drop dramatically and it would just be reflective of these other 100 or so calls um, that that weren't going to voicemail. So we also have our Teams example here where we can see the no associations there. We know that there's a couple peer-to-peer calls in there, but we can always come back, run through the details of these and see that that was Kyle and Jim making those calls, and hopefully then perhaps an update would be made there to align this with them and what team they should really belong to. And the last one here is the WebEx calling, where we have these 20 unassociated show at the top. For purposes of what we're doing here, maybe we wouldn't want these. Again, just as we did with the CUCM, we could go ahead and filter those out. I think that what I wanted to do is give you all an opportunity to see that slideshow that I showed briefly earlier, and maybe grab a screenshot or just kind of look at it, and maybe I can describe it in a little bit more detail. But here with the CUCM unassociated fields, there's actually more than, this is a list of 8 or so, but these top ones here, they are, the end user ID can appear in the originating side of a call, in the dialed, that being the party that initially receives the call, or the terminating, where the party ends the call. And often these are the same, but not always. So each of these first 7 or 6 here really have 3 different options available in the groupings. And then for the device pool, appears on the originating terminating side, and that hunt pilot description just in the one place. Onto the teams, we have the calling and call party side of the call, and with these 11 fields here, that so that's a total of 22 different options. Actually, it's 33 because it can be calling, called, or calling and called. So you see how that kind of adds up as far as having options where you will see that unassociated. You can kind of get an idea of why it's important to have some understanding. WebEx calling has a few less, but still, it's good to know that the calling call party manager may not be populated, or the client type, site, or name in the data that we get. And so and it's possible, as I've mentioned, to make updates on the other side. And then here within Zoom, there's just a few of them. And like I mentioned, our data has them all populated. So I wasn't able to produce a report, but these are the two fields within the Zoom platform. All right, I think I'm just about winding down here, Dre. I can make it interesting if we want to jump to something else, but if we have questions, I'd love to field them.
Yeah, no questions so far yet, John. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to share.
Yeah, I
Definitely
just
good.
there's one thing that I was thinking, and it's not really so much related, but I think it's really interesting that within the call manager, the grouping stats can be kind of easily. Uh, it can get a little confusing when people are trying to sort it out. But I wanted to point out here that in a grouping like this, where we have a department and a description, the you can actually ca- um, curate your results based on that second filtering, and it's really pretty slick. And I'm going to go ahead and do it here. I'm going to set this maximum uh, grouping here to 5 and show you how it works. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And was that 1 or 2? 2. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And we'll set our time. So in setting that secondary grouping to have a minimum of 5 calls, it doesn't affect the uh, is this the right report? Which one did I do? It wasn't that one. Yeah. All right, I'll do the right one. Frightened myself there for a second. So in running this, we can limit the in that case, I set the max at 5. So here I'm just seeing within the rentals, even though there's 1,375 calls, I'm just showing the users that had 5 or less, and that you can do the converse too. So if you're running a report where you want to get departmental information, but you're kind of looking for, just the top callers or the bottom, you can do that by adjusting that secondary grouping min max. And I wanted to point that out as another way of powerfully being able to control the output within the grouping stats, although it's not kind of directly related to the unassociated. All right, so that pretty much wraps what I wanted to discuss today. Any questions come in while I've been chattering?
No, sir. No questions have come in. He did such a great job. No one had any questions.
All right, let's hope that's the case.